Maya Chen had always been the type of person who preferred watching clouds drift across the sky rather than making small talk with strangers. When her father received orders for yet another military transfer, this time to Naval Base Coronado in San Diego, Maya felt the familiar knot form in her stomach. At 17, she had attended 6 different schools across 3 different states, and each move felt like starting over from scratch. The first day at Oceanside High School arrived with the typical California sunshine that everyone always talked about, but Maya felt nothing but gray clouds in her chest. She clutched her schedule tightly as she navigated the crowded hallways, trying to blend into the background as she had learned to do so well. Her long black hair fell like a curtain around her face, and she kept her eyes down, focusing on the polished linoleum floors rather than the curious stares from other students. Maya's father, Commander James Chen, had given her his usual pep talk that morning over breakfast. "Remember, kiddo, confidence is key. Stand tall, speak up, and show them what you're made of." But confidence felt like a foreign language to Maya, especially when she was the outsider looking in on established social circles that had formed over years. Her first class was advanced physics, and Maya slipped into a seat near the back corner, hoping to remain invisible. The teacher, Mr. Rodriguez, was explaining orbital mechanics when 3 girls walked in late, laughing loudly and clearly unbothered by the disruption they caused. The tallest one, a blonde with perfectly styled hair and expensive-looking clothes, scanned the room until her eyes landed on Maya. "Oh, look," the girl whispered loudly enough for half the class to hear. "We have a new little mouse hiding in the corner." Maya felt her cheeks burn, but she kept her eyes fixed on her notebook, pretending to take detailed notes about gravitational forces while her heart hammered against her ribs. The girl's name, she learned when Mr. Rodriguez called attendance, was Jessica Hartwell. The 2 girls flanking her were Madison and Chloe, and together they seemed to command the attention of the entire classroom. During lunch, Maya found a quiet spot under a tree in the courtyard, pulling out the sandwich her father had packed for her. She was halfway through eating when a shadow fell across her book. Looking up, she found Jessica standing there with her arms crossed, flanked by her 2 friends. "So, new girl," Jessica said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "where exactly did you crawl out from? You look like you've never seen sunlight before." Maya's throat felt dry, but she managed to whisper, "We just moved here from Norfolk, Virginia." Madison let out a theatrical gasp. "Oh my God, did you hear that accent? It's like she's from another planet or something." "Definitely not California material," Chloe added with a smirk. "I mean, look at those clothes. Did you shop at a thrift store in the dark?" Maya glanced down at her simple jeans and navy blue sweater, clothes her father had helped her pick out because he said navy blue was always a safe choice. They weren't fashionable, but they were clean and comfortable. Still, under the scrutiny of these 3 girls, Maya felt like she was wearing rags. "Leave me alone," Maya said quietly, gathering her things to leave. "Oh, we're not done talking to you yet," Jessica said, stepping closer. "See, we have a reputation to maintain at this school, and having someone like you wandering around doesn't really fit with our image." Maya stood up, her lunch half-eaten and forgotten. "I'm not bothering anyone. I just want to be left alone." "But that's the problem," Jessica continued, her voice getting louder and attracting attention from other students. "You're bothering us just by existing, walking around here like some lost little ghost, making everyone feel sorry for you." The words hit Maya like physical blows, each one finding its mark. She had heard similar words at other schools, in other towns, but somehow they hurt just as much every time. Maya picked up her backpack and walked away as quickly as she could without running, leaving her lunch scattered on the ground. The harassment continued over the following weeks, sometimes subtle and sometimes overt. Jessica and her friends would make comments about Maya's appearance, her quiet demeanor, or her weird lunch choices. They would whisper and laugh when she walked by, or deliberately bump into her in the hallways. Maya tried switching her route to classes, eating lunch in different locations, and even arriving at school later to avoid them. But somehow they always found her. The worst incident happened on a Thursday afternoon in the computer lab. Maya was working on a coding assignment, something she actually enjoyed and was good at, when Jessica sat down at the computer next to her. Maya tried to ignore her presence and focus on her screen, but Jessica leaned over and started reading Maya's code aloud in a mocking voice. "Oh, look, the little computer nerd thinks she's so smart," Jessica announced to the room. "Bet her only friends are ones and zeros." Maya's fingers froze over the keyboard. She had been coding since she was 12, teaching herself different programming languages during the long, lonely evenings at various military bases. It was one of the few things that made her feel competent and confident, and now Jessica was trying to turn even that into something shameful. "At least I have skills," Maya said quietly, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Jessica's eyes narrowed dangerously. "What did you just say to me?" Maya's courage evaporated as quickly as it had appeared. "Nothing. I didn't say anything. That's what I thought," Jessica said with satisfaction. "Remember your place here, new girl. You're nobody, and you'll always be nobody." That evening, Maya sat in her room staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her father was working late again, preparing for some important inspection, and the house felt too quiet and too empty. She wondered if she would ever find a place where she belonged, or if she was destined to always be the outsider looking in. The confident, capable person her father believed her to be felt like a complete stranger. Maya picked up her phone and scrolled through the social media accounts of her classmates, watching their perfect lives play out in carefully curated posts. Jessica's Instagram was full of pictures from parties Maya would never be invited to, shopping trips to stores Maya couldn't afford, and group photos with friends who all looked like they belonged in a magazine. Maya's own account had exactly 3 followers and hadn't been updated in months. She closed the app and opened her laptop instead, losing herself in lines of code and complex algorithms. At least here, in this digital world of logic and structure, things made sense. Variables had clear definitions, functions had predictable outputs, and problems had solutions if you just worked hard enough to find them. Maya was working on a particularly challenging program when her father finally came home around 10 o'clock. He knocked on her door and peeked in, his uniform still crisp despite the long day. "How was school today, kiddo?" he asked, settling into the chair at her desk. Maya considered telling him about Jessica and her friends, about the constant comments and the way they made her feel like disappearing entirely. But her father already carried so much weight on his shoulders, and the last thing he needed was to worry about her social problems on top of his military responsibilities. "It was fine," she said instead, saving her program and closing the laptop. "Just working on some homework." Commander Chen studied her face with the same careful attention he brought to military briefings. Maya had inherited his analytical mind, but she had also learned to hide her emotions as carefully as he hid classified information. "Maya, you know you can talk to me about anything, right? I know these moves are hard on you, and I wish things could be different." Maya nodded and managed a small smile. "I know, Dad. I'm fine, really. Just tired." After he left, Maya lay in bed, staring at the ceiling and listening to the unfamiliar sounds of their new neighborhood. Somewhere in the distance, she could hear the ocean waves crashing against the shore, a sound that should have been soothing but somehow made her feel even more isolated. Tomorrow would bring another day of walking through school hallways alone, another day of Jessica's comments and knowing looks from other students. Maya closed her eyes and tried to imagine a different version of herself, someone brave and confident who could stand up to bullies without her voice shaking, someone who could walk into a room and command respect instead of hoping to remain invisible, someone worthy of the faith her father had in her. But that person felt as distant and unreachable as the stars she used to study through her telescope back in Norfolk. Maya Chen was just the quiet new girl, and according to Jessica Hartwell, that's all she would ever be. As sleep finally began to claim her, Maya's mind drifted to the coding project she had been working on, a complex simulation program that modeled social network dynamics. Maybe if she could understand the algorithms that govern social interactions, she could finally crack the code of fitting in. But even as the thought formed, Maya knew that real life was far messier and more unpredictable than any program she could write. Tomorrow would come whether she was ready or not, bringing with it another day of challenges she wasn't sure she had the strength to face. But Maya Chen had survived 6 school transfers and countless new beginnings, and somehow she would survive this too, even if she couldn't see how just yet. The breaking point came on a Friday afternoon during what should have been a routine fire drill. Maya was walking out of the building with her chemistry class when Jessica and her friends surrounded her near the flagpole where students were supposed to gather. The teachers were busy managing the crowd and checking attendance, leaving the students largely unsupervised. "Hey, mouse girl," Jessica called out, loud enough for nearby students to hear. "I heard your dad works on the base. What does he do? Clean toilets?" Maya felt the familiar burn of humiliation in her cheeks, but this time, something else sparked alongside it. Her father worked 16-hour days serving his country, and he had earned every medal and commendation on his uniform through years of dedication and sacrifice. No one had the right to mock him, especially not someone who had never worked a day in their life. "He's a naval officer," Maya said, her voice steadier than she felt. Madison laughed mockingly. "Oh, wow, so official. I bet he pushes papers around all day and pretends to be important." "At least he's not living off his parents' money," Maya replied, the words coming out before she could stop them. The laughter died immediately. Jessica's face darkened with anger, and she stepped closer to Maya, invading her personal space in a way that made several nearby students turn to watch. "What did you just say to me?" Jessica hissed. Maya's newfound courage wavered, but she didn't back down. "I said at least my father works for what he has instead of just expecting everything to be handed to him." "You little freak," Jessica spat. "You think you're better than us? You're nothing but a pathetic military brat who can't even make a single friend." The crowd of watching students had grown larger, and Maya could feel dozens of eyes on her. Some looked entertained by the drama, others seemed uncomfortable but unwilling to intervene. Maya realized she had reached a crossroads where she could either retreat into her familiar shell of silence or finally stand up for herself and her father. "At least I know who I am," Maya said, her voice growing stronger. "I don't need to tear other people down to feel important." Jessica's face turned red with fury. "You're going to regret saying that. Nobody talks to me like that and gets away with it." Before Maya could respond, a sharp whistle cut through the air, signaling the end of the fire drill. Students began moving back toward the building, but Jessica grabbed Maya's arm as she tried to leave. "This isn't over," Jessica whispered menacingly. "I'm going to make sure everyone at this school knows exactly what kind of freak you really are." Maya pulled her arm free and walked away on shaking legs, but she felt something different inside her chest. For the first time since arriving at Oceanside High, she had stood up for herself. It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time, like jumping off a cliff without knowing if there was water below. The consequences of her defiance became clear over the weekend when Maya checked her social media accounts. Jessica had posted a series of photos and videos that painted Maya in the worst possible light. There were unflattering, candid shots taken without her knowledge, accompanied by cruel captions about her appearance and social status. One video showed Maya eating lunch alone, with Jessica's voice narrating about pathetic losers who can't make friends. But the worst post was a group photo of Jessica and her friends with the caption, "When the weird military brat thinks she can talk back to her betters. Time to show her what happens when nobodies try to act like somebodies." Maya stared at her phone in horror as the likes and comments poured in. Some students defended her, but others joined in the mockery, adding their own cruel observations and jokes. By Sunday evening, the posts had been shared dozens of times, and Maya felt like her humiliation had been broadcast to the entire school. She spent most of the weekend in her room, alternating between rage and despair. Her father was away on a training exercise, so she had the house to herself and plenty of time to spiral into darker and darker thoughts. Maya began to wonder if Jessica was right, if she really was just a pathetic nobody who would never fit in anywhere. Monday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching Maya's mood perfectly. She considered faking sick to avoid school, but her father had raised her to face her problems head-on, even when it seemed impossible. Maya dressed carefully in her most confident-looking outfit, a black sweater and jeans that her father said made her look sharp and professional. The hallways buzzed with whispered conversations that stopped abruptly when Maya walked by. She could feel eyes following her, and she heard fragments of comments about the weekend's social media drama. Some students looked sympathetic, others seemed entertained by her misfortune, and a few appeared genuinely angry on her behalf. Maya's first class was English literature, where they were studying books about courage and heroism. The irony wasn't lost on her as she listened to discussions about characters who faced impossible odds and found the strength to persevere. She wanted to be like those fictional heroes, but real life felt much more complicated and frightening than any story. During lunch, Maya retreated to the library, hoping to find some peace among the books. She was reading quietly when a girl she had never spoken to before sat down across from her. The girl had short red hair and paint-stained fingers, and she looked at Maya with curious but kind eyes. "I'm Sarah," the girl said simply. "I saw what happened online this weekend. Jessica Hartwell is a total nightmare, and I can't believe she got away with posting those things about you." Maya looked up from her book, surprised by the unexpected support. "Thanks, I guess. I probably shouldn't have said anything to her in the first place." "Are you kidding?" Sarah's eyes flashed with indignation. "She's been terrorizing people at this school for years. Someone needed to finally call her out on her behavior." "Well, now I'm paying the price for it," Maya said bitterly. Sarah leaned forward conspiratorially. "Maybe not. I've been documenting Jessica's bullying for months, taking screenshots of her posts and recording incidents. I was waiting for the right moment to do something about it, and I think that moment might be now." Maya felt a spark of interest, despite her dejection. "What do you mean?" "My mom works for the school district's anti-bullying task force," Sarah explained. "She's been looking for clear evidence of cyberbullying to use as a case study for new policies. Jessica just handed us exactly what we need." The idea of fighting back against Jessica felt both thrilling and terrifying. Maya had spent so long trying to remain invisible that the thought of taking action seemed almost impossible, but she was tired of being treated like she didn't matter, tired of watching Jessica hurt other people with no consequences. "What would I have to do?" Maya asked cautiously. "Just tell your story honestly," Sarah said. "Document everything that's happened, including the social media posts from this weekend. My mom can help us present it to the right people." Maya spent the rest of the day thinking about Sarah's proposal. She had always been taught to handle problems herself, but this situation had grown beyond what she could manage alone. Jessica's behavior wasn't just about Maya anymore. It was about creating a hostile environment for anyone who didn't fit into her narrow definition of acceptable. That evening, Maya's father returned from his training exercise, tired but glad to be home. Over dinner, he told her stories about the young sailors he had been training, how they started out uncertain and scared, but gradually found their confidence through facing challenges together. You know what I've learned in 20 years of military service? Commander Chen said, setting down his fork and looking directly at his daughter. The biggest battles aren't always fought on battlefields. Sometimes the most important fights happen in ordinary places, by ordinary people who decide they've had enough of injustice. Maya felt like her father was speaking directly to her situation, even though he didn't know the details. She thought about the choice in front of her. She could continue hiding and hoping the problem would go away, or she could stand up and fight for herself and others who were being hurt. "Dad," Maya said carefully, "what would you do if someone was hurting other people and getting away with it?" Commander Chen studied his daughter's face with the keen attention of a military strategist. "I'd gather my intelligence, build a strong case, and present it through proper channels, and I'd make sure I had allies who shared my commitment to doing what's right." That night, Maya sat at her computer and began typing. She documented every incident with Jessica, every cruel comment and humiliating moment. She took screenshots of the social media posts and wrote detailed accounts of how each interaction had made her feel. It was painful to relive those experiences, but it was also empowering to see them laid out clearly as evidence of a pattern of behavior. As she worked, Maya realized something important. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was someone who had been wronged, but she was also someone with the power to seek justice. The quiet girl who had walked into Oceanside High School a few weeks ago would never have considered fighting back. But that girl was changing into someone stronger and more determined. Maya saved her document and prepared for what would come next. She had spent her whole life moving from place to place, always starting over as an outsider. But maybe this time, instead of trying to fit in with a broken system, she could help fix it. Maybe this time, instead of accepting injustice as inevitable, she could be part of the solution. Tomorrow, Maya would take her evidence to Sarah's mother and begin the process of holding Jessica accountable for her actions. It wouldn't be easy, and there would probably be more challenges ahead. But for the first time since moving to California, Maya felt like she had a purpose beyond just surviving each day. The quiet new girl was about to make some noise, and Maya Chen was ready to discover just how much courage she had inherited from her military father. The real battle was just beginning, but this time Maya wouldn't be fighting it alone. The meeting with Sarah's mother, Dr. Patricia Williams, took place the following Tuesday after school in the district office building. Maya had never been inside such an official-looking place before, with its polished floors and framed certificates covering the walls. Dr. Williams was a tall woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude that reminded Maya of her father's military bearing. "Maya," Dr. Williams said as they sat down in her office, "Sarah has told me about your situation, and I've reviewed the documentation you've prepared. What Jessica Hartwell and her friends have done constitutes a clear case of cyberbullying and harassment." Maya felt a mixture of relief and nervousness. What happens next? "We'll need to interview other students who witnessed these incidents, and we'll need to gather all the digital evidence before it can be deleted," Dr. Williams explained. "This kind of investigation takes time, but I want you to know that we take these matters very seriously." Over the next 2 weeks, Maya found herself caught in a whirlwind of interviews, statements, and evidence gathering. Several students came forward with their own stories about Jessica's bullying, including some who had been too afraid to speak up before. Maya learned that she wasn't Jessica's first victim, and she wouldn't have been the last if no one had taken action. The most surprising development came when Marcus Rodriguez, one of the popular athletes, approached Maya in the hallway between classes. Maya had always assumed that someone like Marcus would automatically side with Jessica's social circle, but his expression was serious and concerned. "I heard about what you're doing," Marcus said quietly. "I want you to know that not everyone thinks what Jessica did was okay. She crossed a line this time." "Thank you," Maya said, still surprised by the support from unexpected places. "There's something else," Marcus continued. Last year, Jessica did something similar to my little sister when she was a freshman. Rachel was too scared to tell anyone, but maybe now she'll be willing to speak up. Maya realized that Jessica's pattern of behavior went back much further than she had imagined. Each new piece of evidence painted a picture of systematic bullying that had been allowed to continue because no one had been willing or able to challenge it effectively. Meanwhile, Jessica had not taken the investigation quietly. She and her friends had started a campaign of intimidation designed to make Maya back down from her accusations. They spread rumors about Maya's family, made threatening comments in the hallways, and tried to turn other students against her by claiming she was trying to destroy their reputations over a harmless joke. The pressure became so intense that Maya began to doubt whether she was doing the right thing. One afternoon, she found herself sitting in her car in the school parking lot, too overwhelmed to even start the engine. Her hands were shaking as she called her father at work. "Dad," she said when he answered, "I think I've made a terrible mistake." Commander Chen listened carefully as Maya explained everything that had been happening, including the investigation and the retaliation from Jessica's group. When she finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Maya," her father said finally, "I want you to meet me at the base tomorrow after school. There's someone I think you should talk to." The next day, Maya drove through the security gates of Naval Base Coronado for the first time since they had moved to California. Her father met her at the visitors center and escorted her through the impressive complex of buildings and training facilities. Maya had always known her father was important in his work, but seeing him in his military environment gave her a new appreciation for his position and responsibilities. They stopped at a building marked Command Headquarters, where her father led her to an office with a nameplate that read Rear Admiral Catherine Morrison. Maya's eyes widened as she realized they were about to meet one of the highest-ranking officers on the base. Admiral Morrison was a compact woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and intelligent blue eyes. Despite her intimidating rank, she greeted Maya with warmth and invited her to sit down for what she called an informal chat. "Your father tells me you're facing some challenges at school," Admiral Morrison said, settling behind her desk. "He also tells me you've chosen to fight back instead of just enduring the situation." Maya nodded, still awed by the setting and the Admiral's attention. "I want to share something with you, Maya," Admiral Morrison continued. "When I was your age, I was the only girl in my advanced mathematics classes. Some of my male classmates thought it would be fun to make my life miserable. They said girls didn't belong in STEM fields, that I was taking up a seat that should go to a real student." Maya leaned forward, captivated by the Admiral's story. "For months, I tried to ignore them, thinking that if I just worked harder and kept my head down, they would eventually respect me. But bullies don't stop because you ignore them. They stop when someone makes them stop." "What did you do?" Maya asked. Admiral Morrison smiled grimly. "I documented every incident, gathered evidence of their harassment, and presented a formal complaint to the school administration. It wasn't easy, and there were consequences. Some people called me a troublemaker, said I couldn't take a joke. But you know what happened in the end?" "What?" "Those boys were held accountable for their actions, and the school implemented new policies to prevent similar harassment. More importantly, I learned that I had the power to stand up for myself and others. That lesson has served me well throughout my career in the Navy." Maya felt something shift inside her chest as she listened to Admiral Morrison's words. Here was living proof that standing up to bullies wasn't just the right thing to do. It was the kind of courage that led to real leadership and success. "Maya," Admiral Morrison said, leaning forward, "your father tells me you're interested in technology and programming. Have you ever considered applying to the Naval Academy?" Maya's mouth fell open in surprise. "I never thought... I didn't know if I was smart enough or brave enough for something like that." "Intelligence and courage aren't things you're born with," Admiral Morrison said firmly. They're qualities you develop by facing challenges and refusing to back down when you know you're right. From what I've heard about your situation, you're already demonstrating both. That evening, Maya sat with her father on their back deck, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. The meeting with Admiral Morrison had given her a new perspective on her conflict with Jessica and on her own potential future. "Dad," Maya said carefully, "why didn't you tell me you had arranged for me to meet the Admiral?" Commander Chen smiled. "Because I wanted you to hear her story without any preconceptions. Admiral Morrison specifically requested to meet with you after I told her what you were going through. She sees something in you that you're just beginning to see in yourself." The investigation concluded 2 weeks later with swift and decisive action from the school district. Jessica Hartwell was suspended for 2 weeks and required to attend counseling sessions about cyberbullying and harassment. Her social media posts were used as evidence in a district-wide training program about the consequences of online cruelty. More importantly, the school implemented new policies for reporting and addressing bullying, with clear consequences for students who engaged in harassment. Maya's courage in coming forward had created lasting change that would protect future students from similar treatment. On her first day back at school after the suspension was announced, Maya noticed something different in the way other students looked at her. Instead of pity or amusement, she saw respect. Several classmates approached her to thank her for speaking up, sharing their own stories of being bullied and expressing gratitude that someone had finally taken action. Sarah, who had become Maya's first real friend at Oceanside High, introduced her to a group of students involved in various technology and academic clubs. For the first time since moving to California, Maya found herself invited to study groups, included in lunch conversations, and treated like someone whose opinions mattered. Jessica, when she returned from her suspension, was notably subdued. The social media scandal had damaged her reputation among students and teachers alike, and her previous circle of followers had largely moved on to other social leaders. She still shot Maya occasional glares in the hallways, but the open harassment had stopped completely. Maya threw herself into her studies with new enthusiasm, particularly in her programming and engineering classes. She joined the robotics club and the academic decathlon team, discovering that she had much more to offer than just the ability to remain invisible. Her confidence grew with each small success, each new friendship, and each challenge she chose to face instead of avoid. 6 months later, Maya stood in Admiral Morrison's office once again, this time holding an acceptance letter to the Naval Academy's summer STEM program for high school students. The quiet girl who had once hidden in the back corners of classrooms had transformed into someone who raised her hand to answer questions, volunteered for leadership positions, and wasn't afraid to speak up when she saw injustice. "Congratulations, Maya," Admiral Morrison said, shaking her hand firmly. "You've proven that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being afraid and doing what's right anyway." Maya thought back to that first day at Oceanside High, when she had felt so small and powerless in the face of Jessica's cruelty. She remembered the girl who had eaten lunch alone under the tree, who had coded late into the night to escape from her loneliness, who had believed that she was destined to always be an outsider. That girl still existed inside her, but she was no longer defined by her fear or her isolation. Maya Chen had learned that strength came not from avoiding conflict, but from standing up for her values and protecting others who couldn't protect themselves. She had discovered that being quiet didn't mean being weak, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was refuse to be silenced. As she left the Admiral's office and walked across the base toward her father's building, Maya felt the California sun warm on her face and the ocean breeze in her hair. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but she was ready for whatever came next. The quiet new girl had found her voice, and she intended to use it to make a difference in the world. Maya Chen was no longer just surviving. She was thriving, leading, and preparing for a future where she would continue to stand up for what was right, no matter who tried to pick on her or anyone else. The Admiral's office had been just the beginning of a much larger journey, one that would take her far beyond the hallways of Oceanside High School and into a life of service, leadership, and unwavering courage.